So we're officially at the time of the year where I am panic reading all the new releases when it comes to horror thrillers and other dark things in preparation for my end of the year list. When I went to put together my favorite horror books of 2025, let's say it was a little bit sparse and I would like that video to be a little bit longer. So I looked around, found some new releases that I hadn't read yet that were on my radar, and some review copies and all of that. And I have some reviews to share with you, some great, some not so good, and everything in between. If that all sounds good, let's get started. First, let's talk about The Place Where They Bury Your Heart by Christina Henry. And this feels like a very old school, classic horror premise where we have this street where this family is growing up, and on it there is this cliche, old abandoned house that pretty much seems haunted. And naturally the parents tell them to stay away from it. It's this old creaky place. Don't go there. And of course, our protagonist, as the wonderful older sister she is, encourages her younger brother to go there on a bit of a dare. He goes there, something happens, and he doesn't come back. And so the story follows the afterwards, because that's just, again, the setup of the story. The idea is what happened to him, and then it goes on to how it affects his group of friends who think there was something perhaps supernatural going on. We follow this young woman as, again, it really changes the trajectory of her family. This book feels like a clear nod or love letter to classic books like It by Stephen King, and you can definitely see those influences. I often say that Christina Henry is a really good storyteller, but I'll be honest, in the last few books I've read by her, I kind of want to take that back, or I've been a little bit more mediocre. I have a whole video coming talking about disappointing releases for 2025, and this one was better than the books that made that list, or at least I didn't include it in the video there, but I almost could have, because the whole video is all about a lot of authors who I feel like should be favorites that don't actually deliver, or at least this year have not delivered the stories I'm looking for or expecting or wanting from authors I've previously praised. I've had a video request for quite a while to put together a top 10 favorite dark fiction authors, and honestly, books like this continue to make me delay that video because I'm not really sure who I'm going to put on it, because I've had really bad luck with authors who in the past have been really consistent for me. So again, this book is not bad. I just think that the characters, the plotting, all of that is really simple, predictable. I think if you're looking for a comfort read, if you just love this genre so much, it might still be worth picking up, because I don't objectively think this one is bad. Again, it wasn't really a huge disappointment or worst book of the year by any means. It has a good rating and I stand by that. But if I'm honest, it's not a special book. It's not going to make my favorites list, and that in itself is a disappointment because, again, I needed a few more books to round out that list at year end. Next up, we have Crafting for Life by Jennifer Kiefer, and this is a story that follows a woman who is working at a crafting store. However, at the beginning of the story, she loses her job because her manager finds out about her personal circumstances and family situation and definitely lays her off for some questionable reasons, and because of that, she decides to take it on herself, a bit of a vigilante justice where she decides to shoplift from this store. However, things go terribly wrong. The story goes on from there. This one I was interested in just because I was really looking for some good cozy horror, and the idea of a horror story all focused around crafting really appealed to me. For transparency, I cannot knit or crochet or do anything crafty with my hands. I film videos poorly and edit them poorly because I'm not capable of doing anything else more artistic. But let me just say that the idea of it really appealed to me. With this one, the challenge for me was I found this one less cozy and more kooky. So it's very much a tonal challenge with this one. Again, I didn't find it objectively bad or troublesome as much as it had almost a silliness to the whole premise and the way the story went, which again, if you're someone who looks for something like over the top and are kind of in the mood, something a little kind of Grady Hendrix-ish in the way that his satire doesn't always work for me. If you love a little bit of that silliness brought into your horror and kind of love that kind of tone, this one might work better for you. Again, it's hit or miss. It's really individual. I think it had a really fun premise, but for me, it kind of went off the rails in ways that I wasn't here for. So go into this one with your own expectations. But again, if you are someone who loves crafting, you might want to pick this one up, although I wish it had been a bigger part of the story, if I'm honest. It was kind of more the setup than the core of the story in my mind. Next, we have Alien Perfect Organism by Shaun Hamill, and this is a standalone story that is technically set in the version of the Alien universe that is tied around the movies. However, in this one, we follow a new character who's down on their luck, who end up getting this opportunity to go to this colony sent there by this billionaire, and of course, when they go there, things go terribly wrong. I'm always very cautious in terms of my expectations when it comes to any kind of adaptation, and I'll say that this one was really fun. I don't think I'm going to put it as a favorite of the year because, again, I think it's challenging for a novelization to do anything to the level of what I typically expect or judge it against when it comes to individual unique works. But within the franchise, I think it was really enjoyable. I'm going to be talking about this more in an upcoming video about a gift guide because I think that other people who enjoy Alien will really like this one as well. But needless to say that I think if you're a fan of the franchise, if you're someone who has read any of the other adaptations and different novelizations that have come out of the larger universe, this one is solid. I thought the writing was great. I believe it's the first time I've read anything by this author, but again, it didn't feel like a lower tier novelization, but really in terms of the writing, the descriptions, the characters, it did feel really fleshed out. And honestly, if I'm honest, it is so hard to find good, solid science fiction horror. I always get requests in my comments saying, what is a book to read that is like Alien? I have a video coming on the topic, but if I'm honest, the novelizations are probably your best bet because everything else is kind of a pale comparison, trying to be Alien without actually being Alien, which this one does. Next up, we have How to Survive Camping by Quinn, and this is a really sweet, cozy horror story that completely worked for me. I'll be honest, when it comes to kind of something more cozy, comfy, and even a little bit funny when it comes to horror, as I mentioned, I can be really hit or miss, but when it lands and the tone just hits me right, it completely worked, which is definitely the case here. Really enjoyed this one. I would personally recommend it as long as you're not expecting a really scary book. If you go in knowing what you're gonna get, I think a lot of you will enjoy it as well if you're already fans of the genre and its tropes. Essentially, in the story, we follow this campground manager who has a history with this particular campground, and so she has a set of rules when it comes to how to survive essentially camping in this area. And so we follow her through these bizarre events as all of these horror tropes and different situations and plots are happening, and it's ridiculous, it's over the top. But for me, what works is that the whole story is told from this campground manager perspective, and in that you really get again this voice of this person who is trying to reason out a really ridiculous situation. And again, it's going to be hit or miss. Maybe other people won't love this book as much as I did, but in my mind, the balance between being serious and not was just right. I was completely immersed, and again, it was just fun. And while again it's not really truly a dark book in terms of some of the other books I often recommend and love on my channel, so know what you're getting yourself into, but sometimes it's nice to have a bit of a break, and especially at a time or maybe even a year where it's been a little bit hard to connect with a lot of the new release horror. I see the same books being written over and over again, and just feeling like the authors that I'm reading, or at least in my mind, it seems like a lot of people don't necessarily have a love for the genre and are just kind of riding trends and going through the motions of writing these stories about horror, and again ticking off boxes of the subgenres without it ever feeling like they have a true love or understanding for the genre that they're writing within. And this one just feels like someone who is oh so self-aware and clearly has a love for this genre, and again is playing it up from this side. But I love being in this character's head, and I think that it completely worked. I flew through it. It's relatively short, and I think that works so well with this one. If it was really long and drawn out or like a multi-book series, I think it would eventually get tired and flat. But this one is quick, to the point, and just landed just right for me. So highly recommend this one. Definitely a favorite of the year. Next is Her One Regret by Donna Freitas, and this is a story that follows a woman who at the beginning of the story, she disappears. She is a mother, leaves her baby behind, and it appears as if she's been kidnapped. However, this is especially concerning to her best friend because while she worries about her best friend actually being kidnapped, it also is disclosed, and this is all in the setup of the story, all in the back of the book, that she before has confessed a deep regret for becoming a mother and has fantasized about faking her own kidnapping and just running away. So it is the question of what happened to her. Did something bad happen, or is she living out that fantasy and escaping a life that she thought she wanted but turns out that she didn't want as much as she did? Now this is one I was very excited to check out because of the fact I've said on my channel many times, I'm fascinated by stories about imperfect or flawed mothers, or those that don't necessarily fit perfectly within the societal expectations of what a good mother looks like. Now, to be clear, as someone who is putting this online, I adore and love my son and wholeheartedly have come to embrace motherhood as it is, but it's a complicated role to take on, and I think that there are very few books that really explore postpartum depression, the, again, expectations that typically fall more on the woman than the man in the situation and so forth, and really looking at that psychological piece. And so I love what this book was doing. I love that it's a really honest, raw perspective with a character saying things that you wouldn't want to say out loud or you'd be scared to, even if maybe at times you've thought them and all of that. So I think this book does that extremely well. What I found a bit lacking is something I see with a lot of these social commentary type thrillers where it has a really important message. It is trying to tell some kind of conversation around, again, motherhood and so forth within the story. But in my mind, where it fails is becoming a really compelling thriller. And so while this book is labeled as a thriller, it kind of feels more like a book clubby contemporary fiction story that happens to have the possibility of a kidnapping within it. So while I'm putting this within my dark fiction wrap up, just know that going in. So again, if you love a book that explores the potential regrets of motherhood and that conversation, pick up this book. If for someone who loves a dark and gritty thriller about someone who has gone missing and just love that criminal investigation, this book is really light on those details. And I think it's a case where the marketing probably used the word thriller in some of the publicity in order to get more people picking up the book rather than it being fully representative of what the book is. And finally, I want to talk about We Are All Guilty Here by Karin. This is the first book in a new investigation series by this popular author. I have generally loved her previous books, Pretty Girls, and my personal favorite, False Witness, and so I was interested in reading this one as well. The basic premise of the story is that not one but two girls have gone missing, these best friends, and trying to figure out what happened to them. Again, was it a kidnapping? Did they run off? Etc. The majority of the story is told from the perspective of the investigating officer. And again, this is set in a small, close community where there are personal connections. So it's not just professional, but also personal in regards to looking for these young women. And so the story is, again, unraveling everything. And as the title suggests, it is one of those stories where it's complicated, where there are different people who have done different things that might have contributed to what happened. And I really like the author in terms of the way that she creates very complicated characters. I'll say that if you love her previous books, like the ones I mentioned, this one is quite consistent with that. Of the three of them, I would put this one as my least favorite of my favorites, but I do think it still earns a place. A average book by Karin is still better than the majority of thrillers I've read this year. And again, I think she's a strong writer. She has biting stories. She doesn't shy away or pull punches when it comes to writing a darker narrative and having the story go to potential places where I very much worried about how bad the story was going to get, where it was going to go. And again, you feel like no one is necessarily safe and you don't know what kind of ending you're going to get. So that's it for this video here. I'd love to know the books I talked about. Which ones are you planning on checking out for yourself? And of course, I'd love to hear what is your favorite dark fiction release of 2025 so far, whether it be a horror, thriller, mystery, or something else. Again, if I haven't read it, I will definitely try to check it out because the end of the year is coming quickly and I want to read all the good books before I make that top 10 closer to December. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, hit the little notification bell so you don't miss another video from me. Otherwise, I'll talk to you again later. Okay, bye-bye.